Hi, I'm Jeff Harris. I'm the honeybee specialist at Mississippi State University. Glad to be with you today for this year's bug camp. It's a shame it's virtual. In the past, I really like bringing students out to see the bees, but it is what it is. Before we get started, I just wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about how beekeepers protect themselves. Obviously, honeybees, like many bees, can sting to defend their homes, and that's why they sting. They sting to protect their home, which in this case is a hive, because inside that hive is their stored food, which is mostly honey and pollen that they're going to survive. The honey is used to survive the winter, and pollen is used as a protein source throughout the year. But they also have their family in there. The queen is laying eggs in the brood nest. Those eggs develop into larvae. Those larvae have to be fed and cared for by nurse adult bees. Those larvae turn into pupae. And the larvae and pupae had to be kept warm in the center of the brood nest for proper development, and then each pupa will emerge 21 days after its egg is laid by the queen to become an adult member of the colony, and that's the life cycle of the honeybee. And so it's all contained in a hive or a tree, and it has to be protected. So if you look, I'll show you some closer ups of the entrance later to show you the guard activity. But before we go on, I just want to tell you what beekeepers do to protect themselves. First of all, they can wear light colored clothing like I am today. It's kind of hot today, but so I prefer not to wear a bee suit. But as long as I use light gray, white, or khaki colors, it's less obnoxious to the bees. They're less afraid of it and less likely to sting it. Now, some beekeepers like to wear either a beekeeping jacket like this, or sometimes it's a full body suit, but it zips up and the veil zips around, but I find these too hot for me, my big body, and Mississippi, so I rarely wear this unless the bees are really mean. The way I do protect my face most of the time, especially this time of year when it's really warm, bees tend to get crankier in the summertime when there's less food available than in the springtime, so I almost always wear a veil when I work bees this time of year. I just prefer the simple pull over the top of the veil, head of the veil. It has a viewing panel here that's usually rectangular, and then you just sort of secure the bottom of the veil against your shirt by pulling it under your arms and tying it. And it's easy on, easy off. That's kind of why I like it. So this is the veil I prefer to wear, and that's all I do in terms of personal protection. Some people wear gloves, especially when they first begin beekeeping. Stings hurt, and wherever your hands are, wherever your body's closest to the bee colony is where they're going to sting you the most. So oftentimes the hands are stung. I've gotten used to it. I've kept bees for 50 years. I get stung a lot in the hands. I don't look for it. I'm not eager for it, but I don't not expect it this time of year in particular. I just try and keep it to a minimum, and that brings me to a beekeeper's biggest protection, and that's the honeybee smoker. This is really a simple device, but it's the most protective gear we have as a beekeeper. It's a can with a funnel-shaped spout where the smoke will come out. This is the chimney, and in this can we're going to build a fire. I usually burn pine straw. Here's the last set of pine straw I had in there. I didn't dump it out before we started today. Let me shake that out. And this is a bellows. It's made out of vinyl and 2 wood panels, and when I squeeze it, hopefully you can hear it if I'm quiet, you hear the air. And that air is blown out of a hole in the bottom of the bellows into a tube right here at my finger into the bottom of the can of the smoker. And you probably know that fire needs oxygen to burn, so when we push the bellows, we're actually pushing oxygen onto the fire, which helps keep it going. And the idea is to initially get a hot fire going, then get it smoldering, and then once it's cool and smoldering, that we blow the cool smoke on the bees to disrupt their defensive behavior. And I'll talk more about that later when we actually do it. So right now I just want to light a smoker. Again, I use pine straw. I usually just take a chunk and kind of fold it on itself using a lighter, light the bottom of it. Remember, fire burns uphill. Try and get the wad going pretty well, and then gently let it set the top, and I want to get it hot before I push it down too far and smother it, and get it going good before I really pack it with more fuel. It's almost there. I want it not to go out. If you do this correctly, a smoker will burn for like an hour or more. If you get it hot initially and then pack it with fuel. I don't need to burn that long today, so I'm not going to pack any more fuel on it. This is good for what we need today. And let me get all the straw in. There we go. All right. Wipe off my lid. I just want to make sure it doesn't go out. It's still it's not as hot as I'd like it. Yeah, we're getting there. You get the idea now that it's going. It's there when I'm working my bees, and it's at the ready. The last thing you want to do when you get a colony of bees open is to not have smoke. You might hit a pocket of bees that the smoke is worn off and they're starting to get defensive and wanting to sting. And the worst thing to have is your smoker goes out and you have no way to defend yourself. By the time you get it lit, you're going to get a lot more stings than you would have if you just keep a smoker lit as you work. So periodically when I work, I stop and check my smoker and add more fuel if I need to, just so you know. All right, we'll stop there for this segment. In the United States, we use a style of beekeeping that's called the Langstroth beehive. It's a stackable hive in which the boxes contain 10 frames. Each one of those frames holds combs, and there's 10 combs in each box, and the boxes can be stacked as the tree needs to grow, as more food's brought in, and so forth. We often paint the hives different colors to help the bees avoid confusion and not drift in the wrong colony. For example, these bees are used to the green box, and they're less likely to drift into the purple box next door. Now this sequence is also showing you how busy the colony entrance can be. There are guards at this entrance whose job it is to sting intruders or kill other insects and bees trying to get in. And of course there are returning bees bringing food back, and then there are other bees trying to cool the nest. And this is the first line of defense that as a beekeeper I need to have control of before I can go to a bee colony. Before we go into that, we'll talk more about the bee colors, and I'm just going to show you a line of bees with the different color boxes. Okay, so I just want to show you this whole line of colonies, and you'll see many of them are still painted white. I haven't painted enough boxes and swapped them out, but that's my goal, is to get different color patterns into the stacks. But you can see throughout, I'm just going to start gradually rotating around. Throughout the line I have boxes of different colors, and like I said, that really does help bees avoid confusion in this whole line of bees. And that's important during times of the year when the bees are likely to start fighting, which is like late summer, like right now. And it helps them avoid going into the wrong colony and possibly getting killed. And that's always a good thing. All right, so that's why we use different colors sometimes. Okay, here's a colony of bees. This is the entrance where the bees are flying in and out. And I have not smoked these bees. They're just steadily working. These entrances, there's always guards at the entrance looking for intruders. So what I'm going to do is bang the front of the colony and then wave a black patch of cloth, and hopefully you'll see how they can attack. Actually, sometimes a year you don't even have to bang the colony or bump it. I'm going to bump it slightly and see if they'll attack like they normally would. And then just sort of, yeah, they seem so steadily working on food that nobody's terribly interested. Isn't that something? You know, it just depends on the mood. Sometimes when they're working a lot of food, they're not too upset with intruders. Interesting. I can't even get them to interested in it. And I haven't smoked them, so I don't know. Go figure. So here's a colony that's a little larger, has a few more bees than the first colony where I tried this sting test, and also they're in the shade, which will make them a little bit crankier. So what I'm going to try and do is get them to respond. So I'm going to bang the colony and then just see if they respond to the movement in front of them. Nobody's responding. I think there's too much good food coming in. And these are gentle bees too. I mean, if some other colonies, let's see what they'll do if I actually just, yeah, I mean, that's what I have to do to get them to sting, is actually really molest them. And they finally attacked the patch, but I really had to go after them. Some colonies of bees, I wouldn't even have touched the box with a cloth. They would have attacked it. It's just that some stocks are gentler than others, even during bad times of the year, like late summer or early summer into late summer. Bees usually sting more than they do in the springtime. But I can't get them riled very much. I'm trying. So in order to get them, I have to actually touch them, and then they eventually attack the cloth, like you see here. So that's, you know, that's a pretty gentle colony. If that's what it takes, is I actually have to touch them to get them to sting, that's a pretty gentle colony. Oh well, my demonstration didn't work too well. While we're here, I just want to show you how smoke does work. So here's my smoker, still going. I'm going to smoke this colony that we just disturbed, drive them back. You can see it drives them back. And once they're gone in, I'm going to get a little smoke inside on 2 puffs. 1, 2. And that smoke will billow up and it causes confusion. And then I can open this colony and look at what's inside. So that's why we have a smoker. And again, it'll usually buy you 20 to 30 minutes of quiet time where the bees are disrupted enough that they're not going to mount an attack. So that's the importance of a bee smoker. Okay, so it's just rained. I've been dodging thunder showers today. Before I go into this hive, I'm going to go ahead and smoke it since I'm standing so close. It just rained. Bees get a little more grumpy when it's raining because they don't have food to work. That's why I gave them a little extra smoke, more than I usually do. I want to make sure they know I'm coming. But before I go in, I want to talk about how the nest is arranged in these hives. Honeybees, when they're kept in hives this way, there's different styles of beekeeping, but when they're kept in this kind of style of beekeeping, the Langstroth style, the brood chamber, that's the place where the queen lays all her eggs, and where the baby bees are raised, tend to be in these 2 boxes here, the green and the orange. So the queen and the baby bees tend to be on the bottom, and then as they get extra honey, surplus honey, they store honey to the outside of these boxes, but in the center of these boxes is where the baby bees are, honey to the outside, but any surplus honey they bring to the top. And this is the honey that beekeepers harvest. They like to leave the bees honey for the winter, and bees need 65 pounds of honey to make it through our winter. 65 to 85 is what I tell beekeepers here. And then beekeepers can harvest this. If this box is full, it's roughly 65 pounds of honey in the top. So I now want to go inside this colony. We'll take some honey off if this is ripe. If not, I know there's some over there that's ripe. And then we'll show you how the honey is extracted. But we'll first take the honey off. I'm going to change my camera position so you can see down, and then we'll look inside maybe one of the brood boxes just to show you what the brood nest is. I doubt we'll see the queen because I'm not going to paw through it. This time of year, it's not a good idea to keep colonies open very long. They get crankier, and you're likely to get a lot of stings in the summertime. But I'll look enough to show you what it looks like inside. Now, I want to show you some of the other tools we use in beekeeping. Obviously, sometimes we need to brush bees, so this is our bee brush, and often we want to brush them from combs, or maybe we want to brush them from the lid before we put it back on so we don't squish bees. But another very important tool is what we call a hive tool. It's a metal bar, and it's for prying, and that's because bees glue things together quite well. So I'm about to take this lid off, and to do that I need to use this hive tool. So whenever a component is taken off of a hive, we use smoke to drive the bees down. So I'm going to crack this lid a little bit, and as I'm cracking it, I blow a little smoke in on both ends. And then I'll go ahead and pull it up harder. It's really glued on there. And then I like to give smoke all the way across. Now, I already can tell you there's not much honey in this hive, and I kind of knew that was the way it would be. In fact, there's very little honey. They haven't done much with it at all. Let me go ahead and show you that. I can still show you a couple things here. Let me show you. You can see that there are 10 frames per box. And here's what the frames look like in this style of beekeeping. what we do is we give the bees what's called foundation, and this foundation is plastic. So it's a hard piece of plastic in this frame, and it's been given the imprint of the comb, and the bees have started making comb on it, but there's not much nectar coming in, and they need a lot of energy. Here you can see more of the comb being made, but they need a lot of nectar coming in to make a lot of comb. And in the summertime, flowers are decreasing in abundance, and they have less energy for making comb, so they're really slowed down in making comb, and they're not making much honey. So this is foundation where they're adding some wax. I hope you can see that in the video. Now, as combs age, they turn brown. So this comb is about 3 or 4 years old, and it's got a little bit of nectar in it, and it was damaged and they're repairing it, but the dark brown area is older comb, and they are putting nectar in it. It's just that they don't have a lot of energy for making wax. So there won't be any honey in this colony that can be harvested, but we can still go down below and look at what's in the brood chamber since we got it open. So beekeepers, when they work a hive, usually work it from the side. They don't want to stand in front of it. And again, as you pry off sections, you smoke between them. So I'm going to lift the purple box off as soon as I get it loose. It's really glued on there. Ugh. Let me try another corner. Really glued on. All right. Well, yep. I've been shaking the hive a little too much. Let me get on the other side and try another corner. There you go. Finally. All right. Let's see what we got in here. I see a lot of honey near the top of these combs, but hopefully there's brood in the center. And when it's this full of honey and bees, you got to go slow, especially with the first comb. And you got to pull straight up so you don't kill bees, and worst of all, injure your queen or perhaps kill her. So pull up gently, and we can see there's a little bit of brood here. It's young brood on this frame. Let me see if I can go down. Oh, here's some older brood that's being capped. So let me explain what's on this frame. So the area here in the corners is capped honey. When the honey is ripe, the bees put wax caps on it. So there's honey right there. You can see it running out where my hive tool is. The area here, these brown caps, each one of those brown cells that's capped is a capped bee pupa. When they're larvae, they're not capped, but when they're ready to pupate, they spin a cocoon around themselves, and just before they do that, the adult bees put a wax cap on there. And these are worker pupae that are capped. These are very young. They were just capped. They will emerge from their cells 12 days from now and become adult bees and join the colony. Let's go next door and see if we can find an older frame of cap brood. And I stirred these up when I was prying so hard. And I've actually gotten about 5 stings because I was rough with them. So that's why I'm using more smoke than I normally would, just because I know they're riled. Okay, this is young brood. Oh yeah, in fact, unfortunately I can't show you because this camera can't see down into the cells, but this is all eggs right here. This whole area right here is nothing but eggs laid by the queen. In fact, and this side is too. Let's see if I can find a frame of all cap brood next door. Not yet. Let's see. Oh, this is a full frame of honey next door. Maybe we could look at that. And like I said, they're pretty riled because I banged them around too much. Yeah, this is all honey on this side. So you can see when it's a slab of honey, they completely cap all the cells. They're working on capping this side. This is all nectar right now, but you can see this was foundation and they've added wax to it. It's full of nectar. This honey is ripening and they're capping it here. This is still unripe down here, but it won't be. It'll be ripe pretty soon. So we'll leave that alone. I don't think I'm going to find a frame of a big frame of cat brood here, and I really don't want to go down the bottom because they will eat me up right now. They're not feeling too good after the rain. Maybe I'll check one more frame this way. Nope, it's all honey. All right, well, and you can see, I don't know if you can see that, but she stung me there, and she's trying to pull her body out, and she's going to die because she tears her body apart. And one thing you'll notice is there's a sting I got earlier that I didn't take out, and bees often will come back to the same sting. I'll give it a little smoke. You know, that's what happens when it rains. Bees don't go get food, and there's more bees at home, and they're grumpier because they're not getting food. But you get the idea what it would look like in the brood nest. Capped brood, uncapped larvae, uncapped eggs. All right. Let's put this one back together. We'll go to one that I know has honey in the top, and I'll show you what the honey looks like, and we'll take a box of honey off that we can extract. Let me put this one back together. And I gotta go slow so I don't squish bees. Never want to squish bees, just go real slow, putting it back down, and then get out of the way. I just wanted you to get an idea of what the colony looks like on the inside. Each one of these boxes has 10 combs. There we go. Now, to avoid squishing when I put the blue box back on, the purple box back on, I smoke them to drive them down. And then I'll put the purple box back on top. Again, there's not much honey in here. Same with the lid. You want to drive bees off the lid, the top, so you can put the lid on. Alright, before I put the lid on, I do want to show you something cool. This gooey stuff right here is a weatherproofing glue that bees use to glue the lid on and also to keep water out. It's waterproofing, it's very protective of the wood, but what's also really cool about it is, it's called propolis, by the way. You can see a line of the gooiness. Very sticky, very good at weatherproofing the wood, but what's also really cool about it is it has antibacterial and antifungal compounds in it to help keep the nest healthy. So it's part weatherproofing material and it's part medicine. It's kind of cool. And bees make it from tree saps. And we'll close this one up. All right, we'll go to another colony and look at where the honey would normally look like. Okay, as in the previous colony, this is actually a 4-box colony. There's 2 boxes of honey on top and 2 boxes for the brood chamber on the bottom. I'm going to smoke the entrance like I did in the previous one. And of course, as I take the lid off, I'm going to smoke under the lid. Here we go. And again, because it's rain, I'm going to use more smoke than I normally do. Bees are crankier. You can hear them. Alright. And now I'm going to show you, this is a full box of honey. This is all honey in the top. I'll show you what honey looks like when it's capped. Fully capped. You kind of saw it in that other colony, but I'm going to show you that all of these frames are full of honey. This is about 60 pounds of honey in the top of this one. So this comb weighs about 7 pounds of honey. And like I said, when the honey's ripe, like this is, the bees put wax coverings on it. And you'll see both sides of this comb are that way. Alright. I'm going to set this one aside a second. That was an older comb. That comb was probably 2 or 3 years old. Here's a brand new comb from this year, and you can see the wax is a little whiter. You can see they didn't perfectly draw out all the foundation in this corner over here, but you can see that the honey that is ripe is capped with wax, and it's not fully full, but what's there is capped. Let's see, here's another nice frame of honey right here. This one looks like it's about a 7-pound frame. Yeah, it's pretty chunky. So there's some honey we can harvest, and we'll do that. I'm going to do it the old crude way. I'm going to brush the bees off and then carry it inside. Actually, I'm going to smoke them first, try and drive some of them down, and then what I do with the brush is in my pocket. So I'm going to pull the combs out. And I'm going to pull, just going to pull the whole box off, and then I'll brush the bees in a second. All right. Yeah, it's pretty heavy. Let's see. Oh Lord. Oh gosh, that's 50 pounds right there. All right. Now I'm looking down in the next box down, and they're just starting some of the frames. Let's look at the foundation on some of these, but boy, there's one big fat one here that we ought to take and get the honey out of. So here, they're just putting new honey in on so here's the plastic foundation. They're making wax and putting nectar in it to make honey. So they just started on these. The one next to it looks very similar. So, you know, they're getting a little bit of nectar coming in. You can see that, again, they're adding comb and putting honey in it. I'm going to pull a real big fat one out of here and trade with one of the ones from at the top. This one's got a little bit more they're working on. But this one, oh, this one's got brood in it, so we can't extract it, but we can look at it. The queen snuck up in here and laid some eggs, even though it's mostly honey. She laid a little bit. Those are worker pupae. This is all honey on either side. So what I'm going to have to do is wait till those hatch out, those pupae come out, and then they'll put honey back in its place and then cap it. And when that's done, I can harvest it. And this side's even got even more brood. So again, these are worker pupae, and that's honey. But I can't harvest it when it's got brood in there. So we'll just give it back to them. And we'll just take one box of honey from them. And that's okay. Oh, here it is. Oop, my string's in the way. All right. So we'll put the lid on. And then what I'm going to do is brush the bees off as best I can off the honey. Pull all the frames out. And then I'll quickly brush the bees off and then walk it inside, and we'll extract the honey. You're not seeing me brush them. I'll brush them over. I got it out of the camera view. I'm still taking them out of the box. So what I'm going to do is just simply brush the bees off the combs like this. All right. And then we'll go inside and extract it. Brush the bees off. Once I get most of them off, we'll take the whole box inside, and then we'll show you how we process it. Again, brush the bees off. They'll go back into their colony. All right. All right. All right. A lot of bees on this one. Just brush them off. It upsets them, but they'll just go back downstairs to their colony and go inside, and I can take the honey away.
Just try and get all the bees off. Got a few more bees on a couple. Brush them off, and then we'll extract them. All right, one last comb. Try not to kill bees. Brush them off. I'm just going to leave them up right here. And now I'm going to carry the honey inside. Now I want to show you the uncapping process. It starts with actually taking the wax cappings off of the honeycombs. And we do that over these gray tubs here. And you can see there are two tubs. If I back off a little bit and show you, the bottom one collects draining honey, and it can be recovered by opening that yellow honey gate and filtering the honey later. And then if you look inside, there's a grid, a wire grid between the top and bottom, and that's for catching the wax that we're going to cut off the combs to release the honey so it can be extracted. And what's inside the tub, it's heating up right now. This is a uncapping knife. This one's electric. I just plugged it in. It'll heat up, and once it's hot, it will slice through that wax really easy, like butter. And so I'm letting it warm up before we start uncapping the honey. So the uncapping procedure is sort of done over this gray tub. Now, once we have uncapped combs, I'm going to use, I have two extractors. This is my real tiny extractor. This one only holds 6 honey frames that are medium sized. But the idea behind an extractor is, I'll just show you, is it's a centrifuge. I'm just going to turn the knob a little. What we're going to do is put our frames of uncapped honey in there, and we can adjust the speed and spin the honey out. And that honey is going to drain to the bottom of the extractor tank. And you can see there's a valve for letting the honey out once it gets a little bit in the tank. And then what we're going to do is going to come out of that valve, and you can see there's a honey bucket below that, and there's a filter on top of that. That filter, so I wasn't shaking so much, actually has two components. There's a crude, coarse component on top, and then a real fine component for catching pollen and stuff like that. And then the idea is to fill that honey bucket, and usually that honey bucket holds 60 pounds of honey, which is roughly 5 gallons. And then once we get a bucket, what I often do is let it settle for a day or two, which I won't show in this video. I just want to give you the overview today. And then what we will do is filter that honey through more filters. I usually like to filter 3 or 4 times before we bottle it, and that makes sure we get a lot of the fine stuff out. We don't ever get everything out. We always leave a little pollen behind, but we get a lot of the crude stuff. And so that's it. That's the extracting process. It's pretty straightforward. Now I'm going to try and actually show you how we do it. Okay, here's our 4th comb. Again, we'll place it on the screw, use the electric hot knife, and cut the wax off. Nice sheets of wax coming off. And the beauty of this, we can take that wax, once it's drained honey, we can clean it up, and I'll show you what we can eventually, we can melt it, filter it, let it dry, and we can create really nice pieces of wax that we can use to make candles or cosmetics. I'll show you a 10-pound block I've got from earlier this year. All right, get this frame in there. Oop. So 2 more frames and we got a load. section of wax. Alright. This side's not so good, but that's alright. We'll go ahead and extract it. Doesn't have as much honey stored in it. Alright. Eventually. It's a little tight. There's one more to go. Now, I don't have. We'll try this one. This one's not very thick. Not sure the knife can uncap it. We'll try. I'm going to get a lot of it, not all of it. That's okay. We don't have to get it all. Nice white wax, brand new wax. Same thing, this is kind of shallow, so we're not going to be able to uncap it all. Alright, that's enough. We just want to do a demo today anyway. Alright. Now, let me wash my hands. Okay, I wanted to show you what's left in the uncapping tub. I've unplugged the uncapping knife. It's going to have to cool off. But you can see the wax cappings are positioned on the screen, and what I like to do is make sure all of the wax is over wire so that it drains well. So just kind of spread it out a little bit, and honey will drip through and collect in the bottom pan, and I can come get that tomorrow, and there'll be quite a bit of liquid honey down there. I'm going to leave the knife in here to cool. It's unplugged now, but there's the cappings. I won't describe what we can do with that, but essentially we can melt it, filter it again, and then once we get a pretty well filtered wax product, we can remelt it and put it in molds. I use baking pans, and I'll show you a block now. So this is a typical block of wax. This is 10 pounds of pure honey beeswax. You can see those cappings clean up quite nicely. I usually use pantyhose to filter it. I won't go into the details, but melt it, filter it through a fine filter like pantyhose. And if you do that several times, you can make a pretty nice clean block of wax. This is considered a crude block of wax. People who really do fine candle work actually clean up better than this, but this is good enough for my needs. I just wanted to show you. And what's really cool is wax is actually more valuable than honey. It probably costs, honey's running $2 or so a pound. Wax is probably 3 to 4 times that. So wax is very valuable to a beekeeper. Just wanted to make sure you knew we could use the wax. Alright, I wanted to show you the inside of the extractor before I put the safety shields on. Whenever you spin it at high speed, you use safety shield to protect your face so things don't get flung out of there. But I just want to show you the idea. What's going to happen is I got this motor, and I can change the speed. Right now I'm going to use very slow just to show you. And it'll sling really fast, and it'll throw the honey out of those combs. And after about 15 to 20 minutes, there won't be any honey left in those for the most part. And whatever honey's in there will drain out the bottom and be filtered down in my bucket. So that's the idea behind the centrifuge. What's really cool about this is these combs, when they're done, they're not torn up because of that. When I showed you those foundation earlier, it was plastic. Well, plastic is really tough and really supports these combs during this process. And the combs won't tear up. And the beauty of that is I can give the combs back to the bees, and they can reuse it. So, and it costs 8 to 9 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax. So if the bees can reuse the combs, next year they can actually give me more honey because they don't have to make as much wax. So that's why beekeepers like to reuse their combs. So I'm going to put the safety shields on and just start extracting. I wanted you to hear the start of the extractor as I rev the motor up. Right now I've got it running pretty low. I'm going to let it run a little faster every few minutes, and once it'll start to wobble sometimes because not all the honey frames are balanced. It's kind of like your mom's laundry machine unbalanced. So sometimes I have to brace the tank, but eventually I'm going to open that valve at the base of the tank and start draining honey into the bucket, and that's the next step in the extraction, just sort of filtering the crude honey into a honey bucket. So I'm going to go ahead and crank it up a little more. Oop, wrong way. And I might lift the schaefer shield once I get up to high speed to show you how fast it's going. Okay, honey's pouring out of it now. I hope you can see that going through the filter. I'm going a little too fast probably. Oh, I don't hit the filter in the best place. That's all right. At least I'm hitting the filter. It's a pretty light honey. It's a mixture of mostly spring honey with some summer honey. The more summer honey in there, the more reddish looking it'll look. My extractor's starting to wobble, so I need to brace it. But you get the idea. The honey is being filtered. You can see the extractor wobbling. I'm just trying to support it with my, you don't see me, I'm off camera using my legs and arms to support the extractor. And we'll just keep going until the honey stops running. I didn't put that many combs in there. It's probably going to give us, let me think, oh, maybe 2 gallons of honey on this round. Super high. So I removed the safety shield so you can see how fast the combs are spinning in the centrifuge on the highest setting. So it's a good thing we have plastic foundation to support that comb as it's being slung. This is not a good idea. I'm just doing it to show you how fast it gets slung. I'm going to return the shield now.